G'day guys, in today's video I'm going to be replacing the display on an S20 fan edition. So this is the replacement service pack screen that I've got. As you can see, it is the vast majority of the assembly. So we'll be swapping the guts out of this one into this one. And typically overall that gives you a much cleaner professional finish as opposed to just swapping the OLED display over. To begin with, I've had this on my blue heat pad here, or heat mat, for about 5 minutes at 75 degrees Celsius. So that does make the back cover fairly tacky. Do note the back on these ones is plastic. So that means you should be able to stick it in and twist, and that should lift up, like so. And if you're lucky, you may be able to take the factory adhesive off with the back cover compared to leaving it on the frame. Delete, bingo. So as you can see, factory adhesive. I'll leave that on the heat pad, or at least put it back on a bit later, and that will become tacky again, so then I can put it onto the new assembly. From here I'll zoom you guys in. And what I'm going to work on now is removing the majority of the internals. I'm going to be using I believe it's a 4-0 Phillips head screwdriver. Very tiny. And that will get out the majority of these screws, if not all of them. Also do remember to remove your SIM tray. There we go. Now let's make a start on these screws. So typically when you're taking out the screws, first thing I'll be aiming for is to take off the cover that leads to the battery, just so you can get in there and quickly disconnect that. Now the reason why I've also still got this on my heat pad here is that it makes everything fairly tacky and more easy for me to actually disassemble the phone. So if you're doing this on a completely cold phone, that back cover probably, the adhesive at least would tear. You may damage the back cover getting into it. So I find with pretty much any repair these days, having some decent heat into the device does help. As also these devices are fairly resilient to heat, so unless you're throwing 100+ degrees Celsius at them, they shouldn't really have any dramas. Switch to tweezers. Probably did note that the back camera lens on this was broken, the back camera glass. That will just pry up here. I will be repairing that on this particular phone, but I do have that in another video, so I won't bother covering that in this particular video here. So we look to have a speaker here, and as you can see on this one, we do have little fragments on there. So I'll probably give that a clean with a toothbrush before I reassemble it. From here I can disconnect the battery. Now I'll move to the screws further down. And those rear bottom screws do look to actually be longer. So you do note that. Slight change up by Samsung. It's taken them quite a few years to actually have a different screw. Normally they're all the same length except the mainboard screws. These ones here do look to be noticeably longer, and they do have a blue tint down the bottom of them as well. should be able to get this off. No, where will I go? Here. There we go. I have that off. I'll put this out of the way. Excuse my slightly runny nose. It is a bit cold at the moment. Now, what I'm going to do here is with the heat, I'm just going to be able to dig and pry underneath. That will lift it up like so. So you don't have to disconnect it. There we go. You will have to disconnect it down here though. So from here, disconnect the under-screen fingerprint scanner, disconnect the display connector, and disconnect the antenna connectors just by sliding under and lifting up slightly. There we go. Do remember white goes over red. There we go. And disconnect the disconnector. Now, the daughter mother cable can go out of the way. There is one Phillips head screw here. So I'll just put that out of the way just temporarily. And I'm just going to try and pry into one little corner, like so. Now do be cautious, I feel like, I don't know, never mind, nice and safe. Next up from here is removing the vibrating motor. It hasn't seemed to have changed in Samsung for quite some years. So we'll put that into here. One. Put this down first. Two. That's good. And Phillips screw swap in. So from here I'll connect the display up, which is just folding it over and pushing down. Now I'll remove the cover for the under-screen fingerprint scanner.
Well, Mr. Burns had done it. The power.
Now, if you're doing this cold, do be cautious, as there is a factory adhesive or factory double-sided tape that holds that into position. And put it down here. And then connect it up. Click. That's pretty good. Next up, I want to remove the main board and swap it over as well. So by the looks of it, we have front-facing camera. Really not much else that needs to be really disconnected or removed. So I'm going to disconnect that there. And I'm going to lift the main board. Once I disconnect there, just going to lift the main board from the corner. As you can see, we start lifting up. There we go, one piece. So with these still left connected, you shouldn't risk any damage there. Slide it across. We need to remove the plastic cover. Move the other one over here. And we should be right just to gently lower that in. Like so. There we go. Now we're in. Now we're going to rerun these cables. Yeah, with a bit of luck, I should be able to get it in its correct position. There we go, that's looking all right to me. Then on the other side, we got to go red under white. Red is also the thinner cable of the two. And once it's in its position, just gently go over it. And then Put the white over the top. Just follow its groove until you get down near the bottom. And then what I'm going to do from here is put it into its little metal slot. Connect it up and go over it with a white. And over here. I'm going to disconnect it and connect it first. There we go. And I should be able to twist this so it runs through the groove. Nope, I just disconnected it again. There we go. Through. Better. So next up from here. Next up, swapping the battery. So what I typically do with batteries is I usually spray some isopropyl alcohol down the bottom here. And that usually completely kills the adhesive. Like so. So I'll run some fresh tape just along here. So I don't really need much, just enough that it stops the phone from rattling around. So you don't have to go overboard with it. So 1, 2. Go. Battery, I typically reconnect them. Stick them down and then disconnect them and continue with the job. So with your battery reinstalled, next up, we'll reconnect is here. So we'll connect the daughter board to the main board. There we go, reconnect, reconnect. Next up, we'll put the bottom plastic on. Screws in it are optional. There we go. Loosen it up. Tighten. There we go, now he's in the groove. And from here, almost done. Reconnect the battery. Now I'm going to move this out of the way and give this a quick clean. There we go. It's looking a fair bit better. Now I just need to double check the screw locations. So we do have one small Phillips head screw going through the main board here. So screw this in. There we go. And next up, this goes over. here, the next challenge is actually reconnecting this connector right here. Probably do it one of two ways. I'm going to go for the easier way of the two, which is just disconnecting the cable. There we go. And we'll reconnect this, line it up and just push down. Should click into position. Next up, put your shield back over the top. Line up down the bottom. Push around the outer perimeter and start putting those screws in. Now I have put my back cover back on there as well. I'm just going to replace the camera lens off camera, but I'm also using that to heat up the back. So then the factory adhesive will become nice and tacky, and it should be relatively easy to stick back on the brand new screen frame assembly. Luckily right now, the amount of screws that I've got meets up perfectly well with the amount of screw holes that are left. And then from there, put that down. There we go. So now my camera lens is all replaced. I've had it sitting on here for a little bit now. And either if your double-sided or the factory adhesive's all ripped up and no good, run some fresh double-sided tape. The other thing you could do is use some B7000 frame adhesive or glue and go around the outer perimeter. It's a bit messier that way, but overall it produces a stronger finish. But from here, this is going to be just fine. So I'm just going to work my way, pinching around the phone, and that will click it back into the original location. And from there, I have one repaired S20 fan edition. From that to that. So I hope this video helps you guys, and I'll catch you guys in another video. Bye.